My name is Luna Carter, 37 years old. I will never forget the day Nathan, my husband, walked into the hospital room with a leather briefcase in his hand. He didn't bring flowers, nor did he ask how I felt after a long week of 4 drips. Instead, he leaned in and said flat and cold right in front of the nurse, "I can't tie my life to a wife who doesn't make money. Madison is my future." Madison, my best friend for 20 years, stood beside him and lifted her hand, the ring catching the fluorescent light. I held my tongue, but inside my pocket that day was the email confirming a multi-million-dollar contract for the children's book series I had quietly built for years. If it were you, what would you do when your husband and your best friend stabbed you in the back right there on your hospital bed? Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to follow along because my story was only beginning. 15 years ago, my life looked very different. I was a poor student at Northwestern University, drowning in tuition loans and endless nights of worrying how I would manage rent the next month. I studied art, a choice my parents considered impractical. They often reminded me, "You should study education or business so you'll have a stable job. Art will never feed you." I didn't argue. I simply drew in silence. Drawing was the only way I could breathe in a suffocating world. I spent hours in a small cafe near campus, ordering a cheap latte and stretching it out until evening. Beside me was my worn-out sketchbook, its cover frayed, filled with hurried pencil lines that carried both worry and longing. One October afternoon, wind from Lake Michigan rattled the cafe windows. I was sketching an old man reading by the window when a voice came from right behind me. "Beautiful. You've captured something most people never see." Startled, I turned. Standing there was a tall young man with neat brown hair, a crisp white shirt tucked into pressed khakis. He radiated confidence unlike the rushed students outside. "Sorry, I was curious. Are you an art major?" He leaned to glance at my sketchbook. I study illustration." He smiled, sliding into the seat across from me without waiting for permission. "I'm Nathan. Marketing. But I think I've found a real artist." His boldness left me flustered. For years, I had defended my passion against skeptical looks, so having someone show genuine respect felt strange, even sweet. Nathan turned the pages of my sketchbook carefully. When he reached a sketch of a little fox with wide round eyes, he stopped. "This little guy is something special." I laughed, a bit embarrassed. "Oh, that's a character I played around with. I call him Finn. A small fox, adventurous but afraid of the dark." "Finn," Nathan repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "He has soul. I can see an entire story behind those eyes. Have you ever thought about making it a series? Kids would love it." Half amazed, half dazed, I stared at him. No one but me had ever thought of that. Nathan spoke with such certainty as if he could already see my future. In the days that followed, Nathan sought me out more. He often dropped by the cafe, bringing me pastries I couldn't afford, and listened intently as I spoke about colors, lines, and light. He asked about techniques, even bought books on painting to converse with me. I remember one evening on the shore of Lake Michigan. The sun burned red, melting into the water. I was sketching while Nathan lay back on the grass, staring at the sky. He turned to me and said warmly, "See? You notice things others miss. Everyone sees the sunset. But you see the pale violet rays still clinging on." To a girl who had always been called a hopeless dreamer, those words felt like medicine. I began to believe Nathan truly saw my worth. After 6 months of dating, he proposed. He knelt at the very cafe table where we'd first met, his eyes shining. "I can't give you much yet. But I promise. I'll build a life where you'll never worry about money, where reality won't crush your creativity. All you'll have to do is draw and dream. I'll handle the rest." My heart trembled. For a young woman so full of uncertainty, those words felt like a lifeline. I nodded, tears spilling, believing I had finally found the man who would protect both my dreams and my life. Our wedding took place in the backyard of Nathan's parents' house in a small town outside Chicago. His mother, Margaret, hung warm yellow lights and placed wildflowers in jars, turning the space into a simple dream. I wore a borrowed white dress from my cousin, while Nathan played our first dance song on an old speaker. My mother whispered through the music, "You're lucky, Luna. He talks about your dreams as if they're his too." I believed it. Believed so deeply that after the wedding, when Nathan suggested I devote all my time to art, I turned down a few practical job opportunities because he promised, "I'll take care of everything." The early days of marriage were genuinely sweet. We rented a tiny apartment above a bakery. In the mornings, I woke to the smell of fresh bread and Nathan humming in the kitchen. At night, we sat on the floor eating instant noodles, dreaming about trips we'd take. He even turned a small room into a studio for me, painting the walls white and installing bright lights so I'd have space to create. He often peeked in while I was drawing and asked, "So where did little Finn go today?" I would smile and answer, "He tried to cross a big bridge. But he was so scared." "Then give him wings," Nathan would say. "Who says foxes can't fly?" His words back then felt like magic. I naively thought I had found a partner who cherished every line of my heart. I let dependence slip into our marriage, believing I would always have a strong shoulder to lean on. But I didn't know that his promise, "I'll take care of everything," would one day become invisible chains. It turned me in Nathan's eyes into a wife who lived off him, while he played the savior. And from there my tragedy began to take root. The day Madison gave birth to baby Harper, it felt like my world cracked again. I still remember Nathan holding that newborn in his arms, his eyes glowing with a light I had never seen for me or any of my creations. He whispered, "Perfect, she's absolutely perfect." But she wasn't ours. Not my family. Yet Nathan held Harper as though she was his blood. I stood outside the hospital glass, hands numb and cold, the only woman left out of the family portrait. From the moment Harper was born, my home began to change. The living room walls once covered in my paintings were gradually replaced with photos of Harper. Harper smiling, Harper learning to walk, Harper in a princess dress. My artwork, once proof of my creative journey, was shoved into storage. Walking past those walls, I touched the frames and felt like an uninvited guest in my own home. Madison visited often, at first with the excuse that the baby was fussy and needed Nathan's help. Slowly, she began staying overnight. I once asked, "Madison, aren't you worried Anthony will start wondering?" She gave a faint laugh, her eyes glittering with a triumph hard to name. "Anthony is always busy, whether he's here or not makes no difference. Nathan truly cares about Harper. The little girl needs a man who knows how to listen." Nathan didn't object. I said nothing, letting his words hang, bent down to adjust Harper's blanket, as if that gesture alone answered everything. In those days, I began to feel like an afterthought in my own home. Madison walked freely into the kitchen, opened the fridge, cooked porridge for Harper. Nathan carried her, played with her, lulled her to sleep with lullabies I had never heard before. I quietly cleaned, brewed tea, set it on the table, but no one even looked. Once I tried to pull Nathan aside and whispered, "Nathan, do you realize we're being erased from our own marriage? This isn't our child." He cut me off, voice sharp. "You're selfish, Luna. That child needs care. All you think about is yourself, your drawings." Meanwhile, Madison is exhausted. In that moment, I understood I was no longer a partner but the obstacle in the way. Then I fell ill. The autoimmune disease that had been lingering flared up, forcing me into long hospital stays. I once thought sickness might bring Nathan back to my side. But each time he stopped by, it was only for a few minutes. He'd leave flowers on the table, then hurry off with the excuse that Madison needs me. The last words he often left at the hospital door were, "Get some rest, don't make a big deal out of it." Instead, the one who came to me every afternoon was Harper. She was 8 years old then, small with soft curls and big round eyes. Carrying a backpack bigger than herself, she sat beside my bed, pulled out her homework and asked, "Miss Luna, can you help me with math?" I laughed, trying to hide the aching pain in my body. "Of course. Let's see what the problem is." Every afternoon Harper came. We solved addition and subtraction problems together. Some days I taught her how to draw a little fox. She looked at the sketch and exclaimed, "Doesn't it look like me? I want to be brave like this fox too." I patted her head, my heart trembling. In the darkness of betrayal by my husband and my best friend, Harper became the only light reminding me I still had worth. But Madison didn't let that last. One day I overheard her whispering to Harper in the hallway, "Be careful with Miss Luna. She isn't sincere. She's jealous of us because Nathan loves you more than anything. Don't believe what she says." The little girl who had bonded with me each day was being planted with seeds of doubt. I saw Harper's confusion, her eyes shifting uneasily when she returned to my room. She still sat and did homework with me, but her smile no longer carried the same fullness. One evening, after I helped Harper pack up her books, she asked quietly, her voice trembling, "Miss Luna, is it true you don't like me?" I froze, quickly grabbing her hand. "No, Harper. I care about you very much. Why would you think that?" She bit her lip, looked down. "Mom said, you don't want me here. That you're jealous." My heart shattered into pieces. I pulled Harper close and whispered, "Never believe that my love for you is fake. You are truly my joy in the hardest days." Harper clung to me, though her eyes still hesitated. I knew Madison was succeeding in painting me as the villain. The day I was discharged, the house that had once been mine looked like a distorted painting. In the living room sat Harper's crib, the walls covered in photos of Madison with Nathan and the child. My presence had shrunk to a dusty old easel tucked away. I stepped inside, feeling like a stranger walking into a home already claimed by others. Nathan held Madison's hand, his voice smug. "See, Luna? This is what a real family looks like. Warm with a child. You never wanted kids, so you could never understand." I felt erased from the very picture I had once colored myself. Worst of all, I wasn't only losing my husband and my best friend, I was at risk of losing the pure affection of Harper, the only one who had still wanted to sit beside me every afternoon. In those months of being pushed aside, I realized I needed something to hold on to, an escape from the feeling of being replaced in my own home. While Nathan and Madison revolved around Harper, I had only pencils, paper, and the tiny studio that had been turned into a toy room. Quietly, I carried my easel down to the basement, among the damp smell and dim yellow light, and began to draw little Finn again. The fox Nathan once said had eyes that carried an entire story. At first, it was only to fill the emptiness in my heart. I wrote and sketched each page like I was speaking to myself, telling the tale of a little fox lost in a forest where no one truly saw him. The fox was afraid, yet each day found one reason to keep moving forward. I didn't know if I was telling stories for children or recounting my own journey. One night, after Madison carried Harper off to bed, I stayed alone in the basement. I drew until my hands ached, looked down at the messy stack of drafts, and burst into laughter. "Finn, maybe it's only you and me who understand each other," I whispered, as if talking to an imaginary friend. But unexpectedly, from those drafts, a new door opened. An old professor happened to visit, saw the pile of drawings on my desk, and advised, "Luna, you should send this to a publisher. This isn't illustration, it's an entire world." I hesitated but eventually did. Weeks later, an email arrived from a small publisher in New York. "We'd like to develop Brave Little Finn into a picture book. Please contact us." I reread it 10 times before I believed it was real. The first contract wasn't grand, only a few $1,000s as an advance, but it was money from my own talent. I didn't tell Nathan. I opened a separate account and registered a small company called Finn Creative LLC, explaining it as for tax purposes. I knew if Nathan discovered the money, he would quickly try to control it. The first book was released when Harper was 3 years old. I still remember spotting it on the shelf of a small bookstore in Chicago. A little girl picked it up, squealed to her mother, "Mom, I want to read about this fox." My heart shook. I stood quietly in the corner, watching the child clutch the book, feeling like someone had laid the first stone of a bridge out of the abyss. Sales grew steadily, then far beyond expectations. The publisher called me, voice excited. "Brave Little Finn is selling better than predicted. We want to expand it into a series." I signed 3 more contracts. Royalties started flowing into Finn Creative LLC. At first, only a few $100s, then a few thousand, and eventually amounts I could hardly believe myself. While Nathan thought I was wasting time with drawings, I was quietly building a small empire. I hired an accountant, sought legal advice on protecting assets. The old lawyer, after hearing my story, looked at me and nodded. "You're smart. Keep everything separate. One day you'll see why this matters." I told no one. The more Nathan belittled me, the more determined I was to keep it hidden. To him, I was still the wife with no income, living off him. He bragged to friends, "Madison handles the child, I handle the finances, Luna doodles for fun." In my mind, I knew my account balance had already surpassed his annual salary. My career exploded in the 5th year. A major media company in Los Angeles called, "We want to buy the animation rights for Brave Little Finn." My ears rang. They spoke of seven-figure numbers. I signed, and Netflix announced the project would officially go into production. When the news broke, I read it silently in the paper while Nathan had no clue. He was busy driving Madison and Harper to a picnic, sending me photos of the three of them smiling brightly outside town. I looked at the phone screen, my hand tightening, then let out a bitter laugh. Go on, keep thinking I'm useless, Nathan. You'll never know who's truly providing for this family. The more I was cast aside, the harder I wrote. I turned pain into children's stories. About a little fox learning courage, a rabbit finding its way home, a flock of sparrows learning to fly after broken wings. Children across America read them, then across Europe and Asia. I received letters from parents. Your story helped my daughter overcome her fear of the dark. Or, my son brings your book to school every day to read to his friends. Those words warmed my heart. Out there, millions of families were opening my books and reading with their children. At home, Nathan and Madison still saw me as a shadow. But instead of hurt, I felt calm. I knew I was building a secret powerful enough to change everything. One night, Nathan saw me working in the basement and mocked. Drawing more silly animals? Doesn't that tire you? No one's paying for that. Maybe. But at least they're more loyal than people. He frowned, not understanding the jab, and walked away. In the Parker family's eyes, especially Nathan's father Richard, his son was always the pride. Richard often introduced Nathan to friends as a man of willpower, hardworking, responsible. Many times I heard Richard say, "That boy is the perfect replica of me in my youth. He'll go further than his father ever did." Every time I heard that, I quietly smiled. I knew if I spoke the truth, that Nathan was no longer the responsible husband his father believed him to be, I would be seen as someone slandering her husband. So I let the moment pass. But then everything changed. The marketing company where Nathan worked went bankrupt after a financial scandal. He lost his job, but instead of finding a new one, he spent most of his time at Madison's, caring for Harper as if she were his own daughter. Madison proudly told everyone, "Nathan is the strongest support I have in my life." Ironically, bills still had to be paid. I didn't want the family to fall into debt, nor did I want Harper to go without, so I quietly used money from Finn Creative LLC to cover expenses. I paid the utilities, Harper's preschool tuition, even covered the car loan under Nathan's name that he never touched his wallet for. I thought everything would remain quiet, until one day the phone rang. On the other end was a deep, gravelly voice I knew well. "Luna, this is Richard. We need to talk. Just the two of us." I froze. Richard rarely called me. He always kept his distance, speaking politely only on holidays. I agreed, though my heart tightened. We met at a small diner in the suburbs, a place Richard often used to meet trusted partners. He arrived in a worn leather jacket, his face lined with the marks of 60-plus years, but his eyes still sharp. He didn't waste time. "Nathan's been unemployed for months, yet I don't see him or Madison lacking anything. Their house is lit, the bills are paid. I want to know, what's going on?" I held my tongue for a moment, then sighed. Warnings echoed in my mind. This was Nathan's father, the man who always saw his son as the ideal. If I told him, would he believe me? I finally reached into my bag and slid a folder across the table. Financial statements, account records, publishing contracts stamped and signed. "Sir, for years I've been the one quietly covering all the expenses." I never said anything because, at the very least, Nathan needed to keep his image before his parents. Richard flipped through each page. I noticed his hands tremble slightly. His eyes scanned the figures. Regular transfers from my company, publishing contracts signed in my name, royalties from children's books flowing into Finn Creative LLC. He lifted his head, voice low. This is yours?" I nodded. Yes. The Brave Little Finn series was written and illustrated by me. It's been published in several countries. Netflix is producing the animated version. All the money in these documents is mine, not Nathan's. In that moment, Richard went still. I saw the pride in him fracture. He muttered almost to himself, "So, my son has been living off you all this time?" My silence was the answer. Richard leaned back, exhaling heavily. "Luna, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let everyone, including his parents, believe Nathan was the provider?" "Because I once loved him. And because I wanted Harper to have a whole family, at least in the eyes of others." I didn't want to expose him without clear proof. I thought, one day the truth would reveal itself. Richard studied me as if searching for bitterness. But he found only calm mixed with exhaustion. He tapped the table lightly, then said in a grave voice, "You're right. The truth will surface eventually. But sometimes someone has to lift the curtain." I raised Nathan. I know him. He always craved praise, always wanted a pedestal built by others. But I never thought he'd be this cowardly. Richard clutched the folder, his aged face flushing with anger, though he quickly steadied himself. "Let me handle this. But don't worry, I won't rush. I want to see with my own eyes how far my son will fall." I was surprised. "You mean?" I'll answered with a measured quiet, "Luna. At least for now. If I speak up too soon, Nathan will make excuses, blame circumstances. I want him to reveal his true self to everyone. And when the time comes, these documents will strike the final blow." There was a spark of resolve in his eyes. For the first time, I saw in Richard not just a father protecting his son, but a man who valued truth and justice above family ties. Before leaving the diner, Richard placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his voice raspy but steady. "You're stronger than I thought, Luna. Nathan doesn't deserve a wife like you. But be patient. The world will see his true face soon enough." That night, the Parker estate glowed with bright lights. It was a family gathering combined with Richard's birthday celebration, a reunion for everyone. But I knew another performance was waiting for me. Nathan and Madison arrived late, hand in hand. Madison wore a tight red dress, flashing the diamond ring on her finger for everyone to see. Nathan walked in triumphant, like a man who believed he had won a game only he knew the rules to. Whispers spread. Relatives glanced at me, some with pity, others with annoyance. I sat quietly in the corner, waiting. Madison clutched Nathan's hand, standing in the middle of the living room, her voice sugary but proud. "We'd like to share some good news." Nathan proposed and I said yes. Scattered applause followed, but Nathan didn't care. He stepped forward, placed a small briefcase on the table, pulled out a stack of papers and spoke clearly. "And one more thing. Luna, from today, I want you to officially sign these divorce papers." He tapped the stack. "Sign the divorce. I'll be filing for spousal support." I slowly walked to the center of the room. All eyes turned to me. I placed a thick folder neatly on the table. The cover bore Netflix's logo, alongside a figure so large it made everyone hold their breath. I opened it, turning it so all could see. "This is the contract to adapt Brave Little Finn into an animated film worth millions. And this." I laid another set of papers directly in front of Nathan. "The deed to the house you and Madison live in. Owned by Finn Creative LLC. My company." The only sound in the room was the rustling of paper. Madison froze, her face draining of color. Nathan's mouth hung open, his eyes darting desperately for an escape. Richard Parker sat at the head chair, his gaze sharp as a blade fixed on his son. Madison stammered, her voice shaking. No way. "Luna, didn't you always say you only drew for fun?" "Yes, I drew for fun. But thanks to that fun, I've supported this entire family for years. Including you, Madison." Nathan struggled, trying to deny it. "You're lying. These documents, they must be fake. Luna could never make that kind of money." Before I could reply, a voice rang out, firm and clear. "Enough, Nathan." Harper. She had sprung up from the sofa, her brown curls trembling, her eyes burning with resolve I had never seen. She turned to Nathan, her voice shaking with emotion yet steady as steel. "You're not my father. My father is Anthony." The room erupted. Madison flinched. Nathan looked like he'd been punched in the chest. His lips trembled, but no words came. Harper went on, her words like a blade. "I'm old enough to understand. I know what you and Mom have done all these years. And I know who's really been there for me, who deserves to be called Dad." My heart ached with both pain and pride. The child Madison once poisoned with doubt now stood strong enough to speak the truth. Madison grabbed her daughter's hand in panic. "Harper, don't say that. Nathan raised you, loved you more than anyone. You can't deny him like this." Harper pulled free, tears brimming. "Love? You let him destroy our family. You let him use me as an excuse for betrayal. I don't want that kind of love." Richard slammed his hand on the table, the sound cracking through the room like thunder. he pointing straight at Nathan. I thought you made a mistake in the moment. But now I see. You didn't just betray your wife, betray your family. You disgraced the honor of this entire bloodline. Nathan stumbled back, his face pale. Madison trembled, her eyes darting around, searching for rescue. You once called me useless, a dependent. But you forgot. It was that very contempt that made me the strongest person in this room. And today, everyone has seen your true face. Nathan turned to Madison as if searching for a final ally. But she avoided his eyes, her lips quivering without sound. Harper sat down, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes shone with determination. I knew, the false curtain had finally fallen. And the showdown I had waited for so long had reached the moment of truth. After Harper tore through the lies, the air in the living room turned heavy as stone. Richard Parker, his face dark and eyes cold as steel, slowly turned to Nathan and Madison. His voice struck like a hammer against stone. Get out. Both of you. Right now. Father, you can't do this. This is my house. Richard roared, his voice shaking the entire estate. Your house? Everything you have was built by my hands. And what have you done with it? Betrayal, deceit, disgrace. I have no son like you anymore. Nathan looked as if he had been slapped. Madison clung to his arm, trembling as she pulled him toward the door. She pleaded, Mr. Richard, please calm down. Nathan and I truly love each other. You have no right to stand here and preach about love after what you've done to your own husband and daughter. Nathan and Madison were cast out, the grand doors slamming behind them with a resounding thud, closing off every last illusion. I thought the play had ended until Anthony, Madison's legal husband, stood up. He had been silent until now, watching, but at that moment his eyes gleamed with resolve. He set a folder on the table, his calm voice chilling everyone in the room. There's a truth I've kept until now. The divorce papers between Madison and me were never legally signed. Which means she and I are still married. Any marriage license she attempted with Nathan would be void and evidence of fraud. Harper, sitting beside me, widened her eyes in horror. Mom, you? I let the moment pass until you were old enough to understand. Your mother and Nathan deceived everyone. But you, Harper, bear no blame. You must know, you have always been my greatest pride. Tears streamed down Harper's cheeks. She collapsed against Anthony's shoulder, whispering, I know. You've always been my real dad. My heart clenched, pain and relief intertwined. The child had finally found her true anchor. Nathan? Anthony's revelation shattered his last shield. Richard's patience was gone. A few days after that gathering, he announced before the entire company board. As of today, Nathan Parker holds no position at Parker Construction. I revoke all privileges and responsibilities from him. The door to his career slammed shut. Without his father's company, Nathan took what he could find, working as a dockhand on the South Side docks. Winter mornings left his hands raw and bleeding from ropes and crates. On cold winter mornings, he was seen in a worn coat, bent over crates of heavy seafood, the stench clinging to him, his hands raw and bleeding from ropes and knives. The man who once thought he had the right to belittle his wife was now nothing but a shadow, tired and broken. And Madison? News of the unsigned divorce and the charge of bigamy spread quickly. Friends, neighbors, former colleagues, all turned their backs. Conversations cut off the moment she entered the room. The custody trial came swiftly. The judge's gavel fell, his voice cold. With evidence of deception and an unstable environment, the court grants full legal custody of Harper to Mr. Anthony Morrison. Madison Morrison may only visit under supervision. Madison cried out in court, No. Harper is mine. She needs me. From the back row, Harper clutched Anthony's hand, refusing to look back. Afterward, Madison fell into a life of squalor in a shabby rental apartment. She worked 2 part-time jobs, mornings at a cafe, evenings at a grocery store, to afford rent and food. The glamorous dresses, the parties, the luxurious days, vanished as if they had never existed. One afternoon, I saw Madison waiting for a bus. Her hair was tangled, eyes ringed with fatigue, her uniform stained with coffee. Our eyes met, shame flickered for a moment, then gave way to a muted sorrow. I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need to push them further down. Their downfall spoke loudly enough. Nathan, once towering, now broken among fish stench, sweat, and pitiful stares. Madison, once proud, now shuffling like a shadow in a cramped apartment. I didn't need more revenge. Life had already delivered it. And more than that, I chose to let go. One evening, I settled into my new studio, sunlight streaming through the window, shining on the paintings of brave little Finn. I knew I had closed an old chapter. And the new one, free, steady, untouched by deceit, was opening before me. Harper was the first to return. At first, she only sent hesitant texts. "Miss Luna, are you feeling better? Then, can I stop by to help organize your paintings?" I didn't push, only replied warmly but briefly. A week passed, then two, and Harper came more often. One May afternoon, she dropped a thick notebook on my desk, her eyes sparkling like stars. "Miss, I'm studying Spanish, French, and even Japanese at school. Do you want me to try translating some parts of Brave Little Finn?" I froze. My heart felt a warm tide. I whispered, "I'd love that. If you're interested, we can do it together." From that day, Harper became my youngest but most passionate collaborator. We spent hours at the long studio table. I read English passages, she scribbled translations, then looked up to ask, "Miss, should bravery be translated as Valencia or courage?" I laughed, patting her head. "You choose. I trust your instincts." On late nights, Harper sometimes fell asleep at the table, her head resting on books, pen still in hand. I gently covered her with a blanket, watching her peaceful face, silently grateful that fate had returned the child who once kept me alive during hospital days. Thanks to her help, Brave Little Finn was translated into many languages with direct verification from international publishers. Soon, letters arrived from young readers in Spain, France, Japan, clumsy drawings, awkward lines in different alphabets. I read them aloud to Harper, and every time her eyes lit with joy. One day, Harper whispered while folding a letter from a French boy, "You know, your books made kids around the world feel braver. I want, someday, to write something that goes everywhere too." I hugged her tightly. "You're already brave, Harper. You're living proof of courage." While my career reached the world, another recovery unfolded. My heart. Anthony re-entered my life not with fancy words, but with quiet patience. He brought Harper to the studio, drove me to meetings, fixed my leaky roof without calling a repairman. Once, I caught him standing in the hall holding a pizza box, waiting until I finished, laughing with Harper over a silly translation. One autumn evening, we sat on the back steps. Maple leaves blanketed the yard, golden light pooling around us. Anthony stayed silent for a long time, then finally spoke. "Luna, we've survived hell together. Now, let's live in peace." I turned, saw in his hand a simple silver ring. No diamond, no luxury. I smiled, a calm smile I thought I had lost. "Anthony, I will. Not because I need a man to lean on, but because you've proven loyalty and I want to keep walking with someone like that." He said nothing more, gently slipped the ring on my finger. It wasn't the fiery start of young love, but the result of a long journey, two betrayed souls finding each other through honesty and patience. Harper, watching, clapped softly. "Finally, you're letting someone care for you. I'm happy for you." I pulled her into my arms, whispering, "No, Harper. I don't need someone to care for me. But I choose to build a new family, a place where you'll always belong." And so we began again. A year later, I stood backstage at a grand hall in Los Angeles. The banner above read, "Women in Literature Award, Annual Ceremony." Applause thundered, spotlights lit the stage. The host called my name and the hall erupted. I stepped out. The lights shone in my eyes, reflecting a confidence I had never known. I lifted my head, facing hundreds rising to clap. In the front row, I found Richard Parker. He gave a small nod, a final acknowledgement. The man who once believed his son perfect now knew who truly deserved respect. That nod wasn't forgiveness, it was honor. The host handed me the clear glass trophy, my name etched beneath for outstanding contribution to children's literature. I held it steady, smiling softly, then walked to the podium. The hall erupted again. Cheers, applause, even voices chanting my name. When the ceremony ended, I stepped into the lobby where Harper and Anthony waited. Harper rushed to hug me, her voice brimming with pride. "Miss, I always knew you were amazing, but tonight you were stronger than I ever imagined." Anthony lingered behind, hands in his pockets, his gaze warm. I smiled, brushing away a tear. The three of us embraced under the golden lights. But that wasn't the end. A week later, the three of us walked along a California beach. Evening sun spilled gold across the water, waves lapping in a gentle rhythm. Harper ran ahead, leaving tiny footprints, laughing as her curls danced in the wind. Anthony walked beside me, murmuring, "Do you remember that first night in the little kitchen, staring at the evidence of betrayal? Back then we thought we'd never rise again." I laughed, leaning my head on his shoulder. "But we made it through. And now here we are at peace." Harper turned, shouting, "Hurry up. The waves are taking the seashell." We ran laughing toward her. I bent down, picked up the shell and placed it in Harper's hand. She looked up at me, her eyes as clear as the day she first entered my hospital room at 8 years old with homework and stories. Now a young girl, but still carrying that same sincerity. "Miss Luna," she said softly, "I think brave little Finn isn't just a character. I think it's you. Someone who walked through the dark to find the light." Far ahead, the horizon deepened purple with dusk. Waves crashed, the last light scattering across the sea like diamonds. The three of us walked side by side on the sand. No words needed, each heart knew. A new chapter had truly begun. As that sunset closed, I thought, maybe all of us will face ruin, be called useless, be dismissed. But it's from that very place that we can find the strength to be reborn, to keep walking with a steadier heart. My story is one fragment of many. But I believe everyone who listens will take away something personal. If it were you, would you choose forgiveness or revenge? What do you think truly defines a person's worth? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you, resonated with your own journey, please follow the channel. Because this isn't the last story, there are more journeys to share. Mine, Harper's, Anthony's, and many everyday but profound stories of family, love, and resilience. Let's build a warm little corner together where we listen, empathize, and find the strength to keep going.